capture and firmly secure Dragon to station. And again, Axiom Mission 4 and its commander Peggy Whitson, pilot Shubhanshu Shukla of ISRO, and mission specialist Sławosz Uznański-Wiśniewski and Tibor Kapu of ESA and Hunor have arrived to the International Space Station with contact at 5:31 a.m. Central, 6:31 a.m. Eastern, as the two were orbiting over the North Atlantic. But you heard earlier on the loops that they have received the go to proceed past waypoint 1 and head straight on to waypoint. The soft capture ring, that initial contact between Dragon Grace and the International Space Station continuing to retract. And we'll await for the calls that the sensors read that it will be time for those 12 hooks on the Dragon to then begin driving and connecting itself to form a hard mate to the International Space Station. The soft capture ring, that initial contact between Dragon Grace and the International Space Station continuing to retract. And we'll await for the calls that the sensors read that it will be time for those 12 hooks on the Dragon to then begin driving and connecting itself to form a hard mate to the International Space Station.
So, ladies and gentlemen, in case you're wondering what's on right now, docking is when the spacecraft joins the launch and locks itself to the International Space Station, so the crew can safely go inside. Think of it a kind of a party connecting it to a building through which people can walk in. So, the approach has begun. The spacecraft crew that travel carrying the Axiom astronauts starts getting close to the International Space Station. Thereafter, it continues to use GPS, lasers,
So those are the visuals that you can see
Ring
right
retraction complete.
now
Docking
of
sequence
the
and holding for MCF
Dragon capsule docking onto the International Space Station. Well, the docking process started almost 2 hours ago, and the other side you see Shubhanshu Shukla, Shuks as the call sign is, his parents there with his family watching this docking process. Well, as this docking process continues, we will give you more details of what has been happening and what's going to happen. Shubhanshu Shukla, who is piloting this
Dragon Grace spacecraft
expedition, is part of this docking process. Although it is entirely automated, but everything is extremely crucial as slowly the Dragon capsule moved close to the International Space Station, and at around 5:31 Central Time is what was announced as the time it made contact with the International Space Station.
The soft capture ring retracting to pull the spacecraft closer to the International Space Station. And once given the go, the ring or the hooks around the Dragon nose cone will drive and connect to form a hard mate.
As the docking process continues, we can see on the screen parents of Shubhanshu Shukla, Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla, they're watching their son.
Teams on the ground in both Houston.
Station Houston on the big loop. MCS configured, proceeding with hook driving.
Station copies.
And the great call there, that's the next step in this docking procedure, is the driving of the hooks, the 12 hooks surrounding the nose cone or the nose of the Dragon spacecraft. And we'll monitor those.Ey'll drive in 2 sets of 6.
So some tense but excited
First set of
moments there for the
6
family.
right now. They're traveling, and we'll continue to follow along as the docking process continues on. And then after that first set of 6, the second set will drive and connect Dragon to form a hard mate to the International Space Station. And once the docking is complete, NASA astronauts Anne McClain and Nicole Ayers, who have been monitoring from the International Space Station from the cupola of the Dragon's arrival, it'll be Ayers that'll begin the hatch opening or hatch operations. And that'll start by opening up the main hatch on the Node 2 Zenith section of the Harmony module. That's what you see Dragon connected to. And what's separating that module and the Dragon spacecraft is that and continuing to monitor that first set of 6 hooks forming that hard mate.
So there on the screen, you see the visuals of the family.
And once the full set of 12
celebrating the moment,
will continue.
The Dragon capsule made contact with the International Space Station, 5:31 Central Time, 4:01 Indian Standard Time.
Between the Harmony module.
Let's cut across to India
Dragon
today's
spacecraft
Akshita Nandagopalan, who's
and
there
access
in
into
the
there.
newsroom. Akshita, you know, it's a proud
then
moment
what
for the
we begin
family
pressurizing
and the
the
country,
vestibule, that's
but this process started a long time ago. It is a tedious process and requires extreme precision.
Of course, and what we're seeing right now, Anjali, is what's referred to as a hard mate. The soft capture is done, which is where you see that the Dragon capsule has made contact with the International Space Station. It seems like they merged together. So for any of us, we'd think, look, the docking is done. It's not. It's a long process, an elaborate process. There are 12 hooks that essentially get attached. The first set of 6, and then the next set of 6 get attached. And that means the hard mate is done. And then you will see pressurizing and ensuring that all necessary parameters are stabilized normal before you will see the hatch being opened up. So they're still going to take some time before you can look out for those images of Group Captain Shukla becoming the first Indian at the International Space Station, before you see them really floating in. They've just attached now to what's referred to as the orbit laboratory of the International Space Station. That's where this particular Dragon capsule has latched on, has docked. But now what you're seeing is those 12 hooks, 6 together in one go, another 6 together will latch on. That will ensure a hard mate is done. With that, the process of attaching the Dragon capsule to the ISS is complete. But after that, a set of next processes come into play to ensure that the cabin is stabilized, to ensure that it's safe for the doors to open up. You will see the door essentially at the ISS first opening up, and then the Dragon capsule latch also being opened. At this point, for the crew, they just sit back, wait for the processes to kick in, wait for all of it to be completed. This is the stage where essentially it's completely hands-off for the crew, fully automated, one step after another. You hear that in the commentary. There's clearly a go-ahead that's given, every step update that's also being given to the crew and for all of us to hear as well. But splendid moment that we've just witnessed, and that's history for us. First Indian ever at the International Space Station. That checklist complete now with Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla's Dragon capsule attaching itself, docking itself perfectly to the International Space Station. Just as expected, a few meters moving slowly, it attached itself for a soft capture, and now the hard mate to be done, which could happen in the next few moments, Anjali.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's interesting that the Axiom 4 crew will actually be welcomed once they go inside. There is supposed to be a little greeting ceremony or a welcome ceremony by the NASA's expedition crew. So it is quite a interesting way how things are done there in space as well. One would think, you know, it's very cut and dried, but yes, it's a big moment for everyone.
Space station completing from soft
Very
capture
true.
to that hard mate.
You can hear the commentary right now. They're giving us constant updates, Anjali, of what's really happening and how the docking actually has happened. It's a very, very difficult process also, but this is a historic moment that we've just witnessed of the docking actually taking place. And the fact that it's happened with such precision. Remember that 28 hours while the Dragon capsule has been moving since liftoff yesterday, about 12 to 14 hours has been committed to just reaching right up to the International Space Station, because mind you, it's constantly moving. The ISS, even at this stage, is moving, and despite that, you have this docking happening. So you can imagine how difficult really that entire process is. I've been highlighting how it's fully 100% automated. So the trajectory was planned much before. Exactly when the docking would happen was planned much before. Now, on what will happen next, you were talking about a welcome party as well. There is already a crew that's on board the International Space Station. There are astronauts currently who are based there, Anjali, who are ready with a welcome party of sorts for the AX4 crew. Once the docking is fully done, at this point, yes, the steps are being completed. So we can't really say, that the Dragon capsule has attached itself to the International Space Station. It's still on. It's an ongoing process. Once it's done, you can expect opening remarks. Essentially, in all likelihood, it will be from the mission commander, Peggy Whitson. We're not yet sure if we will be able to hear from Group Captain Shukla as well on that historic moment. But after that, there will be a small welcome party that will take place on board the International Space Station, and hopefully we'll continue to get images of that as well, because it's also the first time that it will kind of set in that you're going to see an Indian at the International Space Station. It's also the first time that the crew will be able to stretch their legs a bit. 28 hours, they've been cramped inside a very, very small area in that capsule. So while they've been able to get up from their seat, it's literally just to turn around and then to be seated back, because there's very limited space in that capsule. So this is the first time, once the doors are open and they make their way into the International Space Station, that they'll actually be able to stretch their legs as well, which I'm sure is a welcome relief for them. This has been attached to the orbit laboratory of the ISS. So that's the wing essentially that they will be entering into first.
Absolutely. And this is, as we were discussing earlier, it's a historic moment, but the job is not done after the docking. Actually, the job starts after that. 14 days of intense hard work. Can you explain to us what is on agenda for Shuks there?
A number of very, very important experiments that will help with ISRO's Gaganyaan mission, for which, of course, Shukla is also going to be there. So that will be his second time in space. But obviously, he understands full well the kind of experience that he'll be bringing on board. Experiments that he's going to be conducting are all handpicked by ISRO. You have many of them, over 60 experiments essentially, that have been chosen not just by the countries and agencies that are a part of this mission, but several others. Over 30 nations have kind of pitched in, Anjali, to say what kind of missions they want also conducted, so they can learn from this mission, which is why I've been saying, let's cut across live. I think the docking is complete now. We'll cut across live as well to that commentary.
Very exciting moment for all those aboard.
And this is a historic moment. Ladies and gentlemen, hands up in the air. And if you want, you can wave out. Feel that Shuks is right in front of us in the screen, and the wheels are wide. May I see all hands, both the hands up in the air, waving. And the commentary, it's a historic moment.
So there you saw the family of Group Captain Shukla as well, celebrating the moment there. Mother, you can see her on the screen, emotional and thanking the higher power for safe docking. Father, smiling and beaming with pride as his son becomes part of history. Not just his son, but the entire team, as Group Captain Shukla mentioned, that this docking or this expedition is a tribute to many who have been part of it. The entire journey of making this human expedition of an Indian possible the first time, an Indian will be at the International Space Station.
Mission 4, the private astronaut mission with Peggy Whitson, who you just heard talking on the big loop, the single line of communications between all four parties, sharing her excitement as she returns to the International Space Station, bringing up first-time flyers and pilot Shubhanshu Shukla of ISRO and mission specialist Sławosz Uznański-Wiśniewski of ESA and Tibor Kapu of Hunor. Contact between the two, between Dragon Grace and the International Space Station at 5:31 a.m. Central Time. And now that the hooks have connected, all 12 and umbilicals deployed, providing power and communications. Now the team inside the International Space Station, namely Nicole Ayers, is going to start beginning the hatch opening procedures. And now that we're docked, she will secure some hardware and then move right into those operations. And first we'll open the large hatch at the Node 2 Zenith, or the space-facing port side of the Harmony module, and that's what you see, similar to where that NASA logo is. That's the Harmony module that the pressurized mating adapter is jettisoning up into and connecting to the Dragon Grace spacecraft. And then from there, she'll traverse into that pressurized mating adapter, and we'll begin pressurizing the vestibule, which is that small space between the hatches on Dragon and the space station. And we have talked about this has been exposed to vacuum prior to docking, and we'll need to fill that space with air to make sure that pressure is equal with the atmospheric pressures on Dragon and the International Space Station. Also putting away some hardware in the process, including the docking across. And Ayers will use a small valve on the station's hatch to slowly introduce that air into the vestibule. And flight controllers here in Houston will continue to monitor the pressure and temperature readings inside and verify that everything is A-OK and leak-free before we get ready to open up the hatches. From that capture moment, which again was 5:31 a.m. Central, 6:31 a.m. Eastern over the North Atlantic. It takes roughly about 2 hours to get everything pressurized and checked out before we open up the hatches and welcome in Axiom Mission 4 to the International Space Station.
It may happen any moment. Please be ready.
Which again, 5:31 a.m. Central.
Esteemed members of the media fraternity, the family, and all of our audience would like to witness this time of We are ready.
SpaceX Dragon on the big loop. Com check on the cabin mic.
Peggy, I have you loud and clear on the cabin mic on the big loop. Dragon, SpaceX on Dragon Aground. That call on the cabin mic actually came over Dragon Aground.
Thanks for the catch. We reconfigured.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to keep your mobile phones ready with the flashlights on Raise it up, high up above, and start waving it. Ladies and gentlemen, your cell phones, your light, reaching up to the skies any moment. We're all waiting for this moment. A moment that the
This is Mission Control Houston as we continue to follow along the progress of the contact capture and beginning of hatch opening procedures as Axiom Mission 4 has arrived to the International Space Station with contact at 5:31 a.m. Central Time. The soft capture and ring have been retracted and stowed away. The 12 hooks around the nose, the bulkhead there of the Dragon SpaceX connected to the pressurized mating adapter have latched on to create the hard mate. The umbilicals have been extended to allow for Dragon to run on power and communication lines provided by the International Space Station. And now looking at approximately 8:35 a.m. Central Time for welcome remarks, and shortly after the Axiom Mission 4 team make their way through the hatchway and into the International Space Station. The docking procedures between the soft capture ring, the hooks, and umbilicals have been completed.
Station on the big loop. Node 2 overhead hatch is open.
Houston copies.
And a good call there down from NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers saying that she has opened up the hatch for the Node 2 Zenith way, the space-facing side of the Harmony module, to give her access to the pressurized mating adapter. And there she will cruise in to begin work on the hatch opening procedures and pressurizing
Station and
the vestibule.
Dragon Houston on the big loop. We are troubleshooting the big loop audio comm issues from earlier, and the action we're about to take will take down big loop comm between ISS and the Axiom crew for about 5 minutes. We may require additional comm checks after.
Station copies.
Dragon copy.
Communications there on the big loop between the teams here in Houston and up to the International Space Station as they troubleshoot some communications, and the big loop that you have been hearing that have connected everyone here inside of Mission Control Houston and the International Space Station Flight Control Room, those aboard the space station, and inside the SpaceX Dragon Grace spacecraft, and the teams in Hawthorne, California, those 4 parties, that's the big loop. They will troubleshoot those communications for about 5 minutes and then recheck. But you heard just prior to that NASA astronauts Anne McLean and Nicole Ayers have begun the hatch opening procedures, in which the large hatch at the Node 2 Zenith, that's the space-facing side of the Harmony module, has been opened, and that will allow for them to begin the hatch opening procedures and pressurize the vestibule, which is what, in addition to the comms checks, we will monitor, as Ayers will use a small valve on the station's hatch to slowly introduce air into the vestibule. That's the gap between the Dragon spacecraft and the International Space Station that has been exposed to vacuum. And from there, they will match the pressure, the atmosphere inside both station and Dragon. And this procedure for hatch opening usually takes about 2 hours or so to perform leak checks and make sure every connection and everything is safe
Station
and sealed.
on the big loop. In step 2.4, the time is 10:56. The APAS equalization valve is back closed.
Houston copies of the good config. Expect at least 15 minutes before we continue.
Station copies.
And that communication between the International Space Station and the International Space Station Flight Control Room, and you heard the word APAS hatch. That is the hatch, again, that they will be operating and looking to open up from the space station side. But in doing so, they will need to pressurize, as we've been talking about, the vestibule, and then allow for the atmospheres to match between the Dragon Grace spacecraft and Axiom Mission 4 crew, the vestibule itself, and the International Space Station all equal throughout to allow for the parties to pass through for the hatch opening and eventual welcome remarks. The contact for Axiom Mission 4 to the International Space Station about a half an hour ago at 5:31 a.m. Central, 6:31 a.m. Eastern. And as they continue to configure the hatch opening procedures for NASA astronaut Anne McClain and Nicole Ayers, between the two of them, we'll continue to work those procedures, and we'll hear those communications throughout in anticipation of Axiom Mission 4 and Commander Peggy Whitson making her return to the International Space Station, her 5th flight, 2nd as a member of Axiom Space and the commander of Axiom Mission 4, and her previous 3 as a NASA astronaut servicing key missions to the International Space Station. And a big part of the coming up in November, 25 years of continuous operations and humans on board the orbiting laboratory. And there she will welcome also first-time flyers and pilot Shubhanshu Shukla of ISRO, Sławomir Uznański-Wiśniewski of ESA, and Tibor Kapu of Hunor for Shukla, Uznański-Wiśniewski, and Kapu representing India, Poland, and Hungary. This will be those nations' first time visiting the orbiting laboratory. And with that, from Axiom Mission 1 through Axiom Mission 4, the International Space Station will have welcomed 14 different private astronaut crew members representing 11 different nations, showing how private astronaut missions truly expand access to the International Space Station for more nations, people, and opportunities. And on your screen, you see the clock counting upwards at the bottom, the T+, that is 1 day, 4 hours, 28 minutes, and now
SpaceX Dragon.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Dragon SpaceX comm check on Dragon ground.
SpaceX Dragon from the cabin mic on Dragon to ground.
Peggy, I'm with you on Dragon to ground.
I'm clear. Did you call for me, or did I misunderstand?
I was returning your call.
Okay, stand by for inventory.
Copy, standing by.
comm checks and communications there between the teams in Hawthorne, California and SpaceX and the SpaceX Dragon Grace spacecraft. As we heard earlier that they were troubleshooting some communications and looking to bring back on the big loop that connects the teams on the ground in SpaceX and NASA, as well as the teams in the International Space Station and the Dragon spacecraft itself.
And also planning our strategies and priorities accordingly, which was not possibly happening earlier. That's right. And of course, that is not possible unless you have a compatible support from the policymakers, the political dispensation.
And I'm also on Dragon Ground. We are about to enter
There you see the Dragon capsule has finally docked onto the International Space Station, but the entire process of opening of the hatch, after which the astronauts would be able to go onto the onboard, will take some time. Let's listen to what the family of Shubhanshu Shukla is saying.
मतलब इतना लगता है और अच्छी तरह बीतेंगे। हम सब बच्चे के लिए पूजा पाठ करेंगे, सब कुछ जो है उसके लिए दुआएं करेंगे, सब कुछ जो है अच्छी तरह जो है चलेगा। 14 दिन हमारे लिए बहुत बढ़िया एंजॉयिंग रहेंगे, बहुत अच्छे खुशी से बीतेंगे।
तो आप देख सकते हैं यहाँ पर गौरव की किस तरीके से प्रतिक्रिया यहाँ परिवार दे रहा है। उनके जो पिता हैं वो बात कर रहे हैं।
Satellite signals right now, they are making their way.
उसी का इंतजार।
जब वो ट्रेनिंग कर रहे थे इस बीच मुलाकात आपकी हुई नहीं, लेकिन वीडियो कॉल पे लगातार बातचीत
हाँ, वीडियो कॉल से बात हो रही थी, मुलाकात भी हुई थी, अप्रैल में हुई थी, एक बार हुई मुलाकात।
आपने आखिरी बार दही चीनी खिला के भेजा था। हाँ, यात्रा शुभ रहे, सब कुछ ठीक रहे, मंगलमय रहे, जो मेहनत आपने किया वो सब सफल रहे।
हाँ, हमने खिलाया था, दही चीनी खिलाया था उसको, दही पेड़ा खिला के भेजा है।
तो ये थी माता जी से बातचीत करते हैं।
श्योर कि मैं ही नहीं, आप सब भी बहुत गौरव फील कर रहे होंगे। ये हमारे पूरे इंडिया के लिए बहुत प्राउड मोमेंट है। हम डेस्परेटली वेट कर रहे थे कि डॉकिंग हो, सेफली वो पहुंचे और उसकी डॉकिंग हो, एंड वो हमने भी देखा। एंड आई एम सो हैप्पी कि वो डॉकिंग भी सेफली हो गई है। जिसका जी हमारी बात उनके लॉन्च होने से पहले, तो उनकी यहाँ से लिफ्ट ऑफ होने से पहले बात हुई थी, एंड वो बहुत खुश और कॉन्फिडेंट थे। वो बोल रहे थे कि वो पहुंचेंगे और अपना काम अच्छे से करेंगे, जो उन्होंने करके दिखाया है। आई एम श्योर। थैंक यू।
पूरी दुनिया की नजर उन पर रही सफल लैंडिंग के बाद, कैसे देख रहे हैं आप लोग? कैसा
इसी सफलता का वेट कर रहे थे जो उन्होंने करके दिखाया है, एंड आई एम सुपर्बली प्राउड राइट नाउ, एंड दैट्स ऑल आई कैन से अभी। थैंक यू।
वहाँ पहुँचने तक थोड़ा सा
So you heard the family speaking about how they are very proud of this moment that Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla has landed there. They say that the 14 days will go by and they'll be waiting for that. And they also gave us details of when they spoke to him the last time. We're going to take a very quick break now. When we come back, we bring you all the latest details of the docking as well as the hatch opening of the International Space Station.
Are watching India Today.
Motorola Razr 60, dangerously cool.
Dangerously cool. Go, stop, go. Playing this game like a tic-tac-toe. Sharp as a razor, the flavor bowl. Flip it out, they wanna fold. Keeping them coming.
Motorola Razr 60, dangerously cool.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola Razr 60, dangerously cool.
Hi, here are the top headlines presented by Motorola. EC team visits Bihar to review poll preparations. Navy staffer arrested for spying for Pakistan's ISI. NIA raids multiple locations in Punjab, Haryana and UP in terror conspiracy case.
Get ready to unlock your dream college. India Today's Best Colleges Survey 2025 is here. From top placements to leading private medical and engineering institutes and emerging colleges to best value for money, we've got you covered. Subscribe now and get 500 rupees off with code ITCollege25. India Today Best Colleges 2025. Your key to the right college. Don't miss out.
The lights are dim, the beat drops, and just when you think the energy couldn't get any higher, an unannounced star walks onto the stage, sending the crowd into a frenzy.